Hello, Simone. I'm excited to talk to you today. Every now and then an article comes out, and it's never the big ones. Like there was a New York Times article on us where you have a big picture of you on the front of it. I loved it. You looked beautiful. It was the women of pronatalism, and I didn't care because it was kind of a boring article to me. But then it's the deranged articles I really like.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the articles from the Intelligencer basically argued that, and we'll go over it because it's really fascinating. It was like, well, what we should really be talking about isn't pronatalism, but what was the word that they used about?
Reproductive justice.
Okay, so what they meant by this is that pronatalism should have had a lot more talk about sterilizing Black women. Sorry, the government sterilizing Black women, and then it wouldn't be as racially problematic. And I'm like, hold on. No, sorry, you might be thinking here that pronatalists should talk about the government not sterilizing Black, like that we should be, no. They think that pronatalism needs to have more talk in it in support of the government sterilizing Black women. This is their progressive position. And
these are the conversations that are missing. Now, she couches it in, well, we can go into the language if you want to, but it's still deeply disturbing to me that.
Yeah, she's like, look, Black women have historically had access to the ability to abort their child as easily as white women have, and that should be what we're focusing the pronatalist conversation around. And they haven't had access to birth control and other means of sterilizing themselves at the rate white women had. And that is the one thing we should be talking about in fertility rates. Now, if you're here thinking, wait, is that true? That doesn't sound true. It's not true. Actually, while Black people only make up 14.4% of the US population, 38% of abortions are performed on Black women. They make up the vast majority of abortions. And if you look at Planned Parenthood clinics, I think it's something like 89% of them are in a minority majority neighborhood. They were originally set up, famously, even by their own website, to sterilize Black women as part of a eugenics program. And they still function in that capacity. There is almost no organization that I think you should be more in support of than Planned Parenthood if you are an actual racist or a eugenicist.
To be fair, she also, talks about the fact that they also want prenatal care, postnatal care, fibroid screenings, well, also STI tests. So that just has to do with,
continue.
Having sex. But basically, she's just like, why aren't we giving free healthcare to people of color? And I don't see how that has to do with anything. And
that's not why.
She opens with that, but then she proceeds to just make it an argument about reproductive choice, and then how Roe versus Wade makes this a bigger issue than ever. So what's clear from her ultimate emphasis, even though she starts with this sort of vague allusion to wanting universal health care, at least for Black women, is that this is really an issue about abortions. And that's where it gets my goat a little bit. Like, wait a second, that's what's missing from pronatalism in your view? It was
weird and meandering, but I will say that if you go through, and we'll get to this when we get to the piece, because I want to read some excerpts from it, because it's actually a very interesting piece, and I quite liked it. Like, it's one of these pieces where it's critical of us, but I like that it comes out because of some of the things that are in it, which we'll get to in a second. Not just from a humor standpoint, but we've broken through one of the progressive walls. We're getting closer to getting through all of the progressive walls, right? They have seen something that historically they didn't see before, right? And all of the things that she said we needed to give Black women were like only relevant if they were like sexually promiscuous. And it made me realize that this is a person who believes that sex is a human right.
I mean, to be fair, either sexually promiscuous or having babies, but then why not this for all women?
Well, or like regularly being raped or something in their community. It's like this. There's these people out there. We went over this in our prepped episode, which we'll review a bit in this one. Good episode. You should check it out if you want. This is the one
that blew my mind. Yeah, about
the government has us funding gay orgies. But anyway, it's like these people think like the founding fathers are like writing down our rights, and they write down, okay, life, liberty, and the pursuit of sex with anyone you want without consequences. That is the three things that we need to preserve in this shrine of rights. Is the right to promiscuity, the right to sex with anyone, the right to treat sex like a handshake, as the, one person said. But let's get into the first bit is a bit on you, which I thought was really interesting in this article here.
Okay.
So she goes, former venture capitalist Simone Collins did attend NatalCon, where she told an NPR reporter that she was prepared to die in childbirth. She also said that she would rather not do that, but explained that historically women died in childbirth at roughly similar rates to the rates which men died protecting their land and country. I have no idea if that's true. And I doubt the Collinses does either. It's the sort of nonsense a person would say to provoke a reporter. And the Collins are good at that. And Collins is good at that. She and her husband, Malcolm, have appeared in so many news stories, I have lost count of the headlines. And each article is more unsettling than the last. So before we go further, some things I like here is one is, unlike the Slate article, which I really didn't appreciate, where they're like, why is everybody writing stuff about this couple? They only created a free school system, created a religion, have a fairly popular podcast, run a movement. They're like, I wonder if, like, as they were writing it, they were like, oh, this is why so many people are talking about them. Run multiple companies. Okay. Successful ones, by the way. But this individual, she's sort of gone past that, where she's like, I get why everyone is talking about them, right? Like, it makes sense. And she also had the presence of mind to get that we are intentionally baiting reporters, not with false information. I mean, that's a true fact, right, Simone? The women die in war is much like, does she not think that that's measurable? How many women died in childbirth and men died in war historically?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember my original source. I'll double check it in case I'm pulling this out of nowhere. I looked through so many studies.
She literally could have like just asked Grok, like, is this true? Like, like we have AI now. Like, I love how there's this like, were they telling the truth? I don't know. And I have no curiosity to check. And it doesn't even seem like a particularly like anti-feminist thing to say. You're like just pointing out that women made sacrifices historically, which I thought was really interesting. I also love now, because Simone does like the full dress up and outfit, progressive reporters immediately when they run into us are like, oh, I get it. Okay, so this is some sort of a troll. They're like, I can't fall for the trap and panic about this, but like, I'm a little bit panicked about this. So how do I handle that? So what are you going to say? You got something there?
Yes. Hold on. It's still loading though. And the problem is that it depends on whether the society was at war. Like, if there was a major war, obviously men conscripted to fight were dying at higher rates. And I wish it was giving me the general number, because that's what I'd originally found, but I can't immediately off.
Okay, whatever. We don't care. Anyway, they, like Musk, are concerned about falling birth rates. So they have decided to have as many babies as they can. They use IVF to select the most superior embryos for implantation. Hold on. I'll also note here where they homeschool their kids, they hit their kids, they used to be atheists, but now they've decided, underline, they're techno-Puritans, a metaphysical system of their own creation. So I love here this, like, everything is mortifying to her, right? A CNN video filmed at NatalCon shows Simone in a dress and bonnet like an 18th century Quaker, but without the egalitarian beliefs. Collins is a troll, certainly, though it's different. Later in the article, they were like, and whether they're Catholics or techno-Puritans or anti-gender egalitarian. And it's like, what about our beliefs are not gender egalitarian? Like, we believe males and females are like genetically different, which, okay, I mean, that's like a theological belief if you don't believe that. Like, that's
I mean, you're not gestating children, so I guess that disqualifies us.
Yeah, but and even here they note that only women can get pregnant, so like clearly she believes this as well. But like, other than that, I don't think you could be particularly more gender egalitarian than our marriage.
Yeah, I don't see it. I mean, also just given the sheer amount of childcare that you do.
Yeah, but I love that she doesn't mention in what way we're gender inegalitarian, right?
Yeah, she just out of nowhere.
It seems to be, well, she does insinuate that we're gender egalitarian because I expect you to undergo the costs and risks associated with reproduction. And I'm like, I don't really.
Oh, but I'm sure she hates Elon Musk for suggesting the use of surrogates.
Yeah,
so that you can have more kids. So you can't win.
Collins is a troll, certainly, though it's difficult to tell where the performance stopped and the sincerity begins. She is pregnant with her 5th child and intends to have more, which is, at a minimum, an extreme commitment to the bit. When she says she's willing to die in pursuit of her brood, I tend to believe her, but if martyrdom is what she wants, she's probably going to be disappointed. American women do perish in childbirth or directly as a result of it, yet most have little in common with the Collinses, who is a well-off and white, like many pronatalists.
I'm too rich to die, Malcolm. They just won't let it happen.
So what I like about this is all the time when they like freak out about you talking potentially dying in childbirth, like they seem to be missing that you are having multiple C-sections, which is incredibly dangerous. Like that. Like there was the other reporter in The Guardian who insinuated that when you said, well, they might take my uterus one way, that they was like in scare quotes.
Like Men in Black or something.
Men in Black or progressives. When you were talking about surgeons, because this happens if you have too many C-sections, it can cause serious risk. So that was really fascinating to me. But I also love the recognition that your life is a troll, but the lack of recognition that like it's also real. Like, can you talk about that? Because there isn't a place where the sincerity ends. It's all sincere and all a troll. Just like that cover of Man's World where it was anime girls and Trump having missiles come out of his mouth and in like an anime style, or that anime little video of like Trump in the
Studio Ghibli inspired Trump video like that's gone around Twitter. The issue is that it seems many progressives don't understand that there's this new trend of very earnest irony or ironic earnestness where like we are self-aware of how ridiculously we come across and we own it and we have fun with it, but we still 100% mean what we're doing and believe in what we're saying and like the way we're dressing or looking. And there's this thought that if we recognize how ridiculous we look to some people, we couldn't possibly actually take that seriously, that a joke can't also be true. When actually the root of humor, things are funny because they're surprising, but they make sense. There's truth to all humor, and that they don't get that is really odd. But there is this repeated pattern we've noticed in media about not just things that we say, but things that other pronatalists have said, especially if they're trolling progressives, that we couldn't possibly be both joking and earnest at the same time when that is absolutely 100% what is going on.
Yeah, well, but I think that is sort of, we did an episode recently on the aesthetics of the new right. It was Raw Nationalist. And I think that is sort of the core of the aesthetics of the new right, where you sort of live your life performatively as a troll, like, because to be a troll is to thumb your nose at the dominant cultural group, like we are just living the way that we want out and proud, and they're gnashing their teeth at us in anger because they can tell that we are happy with who we are. We are happy with this whole thing we're doing. You are happy having lots of kids. We are happy to raise them. Like anyone, I think she thinks like the techno-Puritan thing is a troll. And like anyone who's actually engaged with like the tract series, or especially like the more recent ones where we get way into like biblical analysis. I'm so excited for the one I have coming up. It's so big, it's so long, but it's just like 4 hours of biblical analysis. And people will see that and they'll be like, no, like they really believes this stuff. Like they're really, really serious about this. Yeah. And I guess it's like, it allows you to engage in all of this with even more earnesty because that, we're not afraid of that judgment. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
Yeah, we're going to do it regardless of what other people say.
Yeah. So if I go here, in 1994, the Clinton administration had developed a healthcare reform package that left out as much as it covered. As Time would later report, the legislation offered, quote, little focus on health services like pre and postnatal care, fibroid screenings, and STI tests, which limited its vision of reproductive, quote unquote, choice. In response, a group of Black women gathered in Chicago hotel room and decided to respond, calling themselves Women of African Descent for Reproductive Justice. They took out full-page ads in the Washington Post and Roll Call magazine outlining their political demands. Reproductive freedom is a life and death issue for many Black women and deserves as much recognition as any other freedom, they wrote.
Now, where I really have trouble with this paragraph is she makes it seem like this Clinton era policy thing only affects Black women instead
It's
of
really
all
weird.
women who would want maybe some of these services. So she's painting this really skewed perception of reality. And then she's also, I think, misrepresenting what this group may have been advocating for if what they're talking about is reproductive choice. They're talking about birth control and abortions when she frames it a little bit differently, like, well, they just want to be checked for fibroids, which is
Yeah.
weird. So I feel like I'm being misled or lied to, and it makes me very uncomfortable. I want to hear her out, but she's already losing me.
Or here, Roberts proposed a broader understanding of reproductive freedom, which did not, quote, reject abortion rights in favor of a right to procreate, end quote, but rather saw, quote, the right to terminate a pregnancy as one part of a broader right to autonomy over one's body and one's reproductive decision makings, end quote. Do you have reproductive freedom if you can birth a child but not house them? Like, what's really interesting here is,
Yeah, like what is
so hold on. What's fascinating to me here, right, is this is almost certainly somebody who would be apoplectic about us choosing, using IPG to choose among our embryos based on genetics, right? But she is meanwhile completely about quote unquote reproductive freedom, which to her has nothing to do with the ability to reproduce, but the ability to choose to abort. And
well, no, no,
I,
no, or have a child while also having your house totally paid for or something.
yeah, well, but she says, if there's raw sewage in your yard and no one in power will do anything about it, are you free? Are your kids free? Is she here comparing the fetus to raw sewage?
No, I think she's saying, how can we have reproductive justice if city infrastructure doesn't work? Which is ironic because that's one of the things we constantly point out is going to fall apart when demographic collapse plays out. But let's not go too deep on that, I guess.
I love this. I understand why right-wing pronatalists don't talk about reproductive justice. Why don't we talk all the time about abortion? Why might that not be like our main talking point? They're invested in race and gender hierarchy, not liberation. And that's true whether they're tradcasts or techno-Puritans. This isn't a novel development either.
Actually, we do talk a lot about abortion
We do.
and specifically how this is not an issue that should be talked about in the name of pronatalism because messing with abortion doesn't help.
But I mean, we are more restrictive on abortion in our perspectives in the mainstream society. Like the
Not
point
really.
of,
No, actually.
no, I mean, than the laws in the mainstream society. The average American would likely agree with us that we do
Yeah.
need to be much more restrictive on abortion.
Yeah.
But the laws in America are like shockingly light on abortion.
In most states. Yeah.
There's multiple states. I think it's multiple states. I know it's at least one because I checked when I heard this. I was like, this can't be true. Where abortion is legal until like the day you give birth, which is absolutely wild. There is in I think almost all of the United States, there is a medical practice where if they're doing a certain, I think it's like after trimester 1 surgery on the baby, they'll give it anesthetics if they are trying to save its life. But if they plan to abort it, they won't give it anesthetics, which is just like mortifying because it shows the
That's
doctor
what bothers me the most.
recognize that this is a, so like, okay, I think that there's a conversation to be had on abortion. I don't see what it has to do with pronatalism or like from her position, this problem that social safety nets are about to collapse. As I said to somebody in my class, because they were yelling at me about this recently from the Stanford Business School, they were like, "Ooh, so funny how like people who say they care about social safety nets are like buddy with like a party that like wants to defund them." And I'm like, no, they want to make them funding lighter so that they last longer. It's really funny to me that you progressives who claim to care about social safety nets don't care that mathematically they're going to break down if we don't do something about this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, which one of us has the crazier position here, right? Or you claim, I've said the same, when you claim to care about Latin Americans, but you don't care that they're below us in fertility rates in a lot of these countries. And we are taking them during their productive years and letting these countries expend the tax dollars to train them during their unproductive years. Like, is that not going to collapse these countries' economies? Like, are you being fair here? Like, in so many instances, it's like they're not. But I want to get back to the central question I asked originally. Should sex be a human right? Like, does it fall into like what are the human rights that somebody should have the ability to pursue within the United States? Or we should like, what are your thoughts on this, Simone?
I think the government shouldn't have to pay for anyone's hobbies. And I consider sex to be a hobby. So I think people should have the right to pursue hobbies that don't hurt them or cause, like hurt the local like shared environment, right? Like if one of your causes is detonating nuclear explosives, that clearly, like if that's a hobby, no, that's not okay because it's going to hurt people in the area. If one of your hobbies is graping people, then no, that's not okay. But otherwise it's fine, but the government shouldn't have to pay for it, which is why I was really alarmed when you went through all the data about PrEP and how much money is being paid
Yeah,
for. Like, I
so
appreciate the fact that like it's reducing disease spread, but at the same time, that's a hobby.
So
And
for clarification, we should give people some background on PrEP. So PrEP is a drug that prevents you from getting AIDS if you have sex with somebody with AIDS. Now, we should note here that the drugs that suppress AIDS are so good now that if you have a monogamous partner who has AIDS, this drug isn't relevant to you because you would know and you would trust that they're on one of the drugs that suppresses AIDS. And as if you read, stuff on this, the risk of transmission is negligible, and I don't even think you'd be recommended to take PrEP just because if your partner it's called like showing zero or something. It means your test is showing zero.
I can't remember. Yeah.
But so this is not for monogamous gay people or monogamous straight people or even gay or straight people who are having sex with a small collection of partners that they know and trust.
Right.
This is for people having sex with people who you don't know about, like casual sex. So Obamacare made it so that every insurance plan had to cover this. And a number of states cover it for free. I think it's like 12 states in the United States cover it for free. And it's like when that money can go to like a child with cancer or something like that, like why on earth is it going to literally the only use case is orgies? And you could say, well, the externality of disease spread is bad. And it's like, I get that, but like we shouldn't be financing this, right? Like maybe if you and that's where I get this. Like an orgy is 100% like not necessary for a person's life. Like lots of people go through their entire lives without orgies or sleeping with random people. Like that's
And they
not.
seem okay. They seem
Yeah.
really okay.
No, I will know, if you are having sex with somebody, outside of PrEP, right? A lot of contraceptives like are not as 100% as people think they are.
Yeah.
And if you are having sex a lot, you can get somebody else pregnant, and this is an expensive externality to a hobby that you have. If you assume that like the way to deal with that is abortion, I do not think that is a great thing to do, but I'm just saying, like, even if I was a person who like had absolutely no problem with like recreational sex and then abortion because when I was younger, I felt that way. I don't think that it is the state's responsibility to pay for that hobby. Just because the hobby can have big, small, negative, expensive externalities, like if somebody has a hobby around like hiking in nature and they get lost, they often have to pay for the rescue effort, like I don't think that should go to the taxpayer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of disturbing when it does. The other thing that strikes me about this is just how reminiscent it seems the implied ideal world of many progressives is the dystopia of Brave New World. They just don't want to admit it.
Okay, explain what you mean by this, because a lot of people don't know the dystopia.
Yeah,
And
in
before you get
Aldous,
to that, hold on. Before you get to that, I want to read the tweet that we mentioned in the PrEP episode that like started all the discussion around PrEP.
okay, go ahead.
That was by Plant Mommy Posadist. Realizing that sex doesn't have to be this sacred, all-important thing and can instead just be an expression of affection between friends who are dear to one another is honestly the most life-changing realization for me, surpassed only by realizing I'm a girl. And then somebody was like, aren't we in an AIDS epidemic or something? You all seriously tripping? And they responded, I literally take pills every day so I can't contract HIV. So there are people, if people like the reason I wanted to read that, if people are like, nobody thinks of sex as something as like insignificant as a handshake. Yes, there literally are people who think that. Continue, Simone. No, it was the Brave New World thing.
No, but that is kind of the attitude that they want in Brave New World. So one of the in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, which is this sci-fi book written in the 1930s of this futuristic dystopia that's surprisingly like today and or our near future, it is a very sexually free world. They have all these sayings they're supposed to repeat, and they've sort of been brainwashed with, and one of them is everyone belongs to everyone else, and it's a mantra that reminds everyone that you should never get in an exclusive relationship. And one character who's kind of leaning towards that is like strongly dissuaded from doing so because it would really hurt her reputation. They're also like really here's just another quote that like makes me think of today. Oh, she like has been napping and doesn't want to wake up, but whatever. Here's another quote from the book that sort of shows how they view relationships. Quote, he let out the amazing truth for a very long period before the time of R. Ford, which is like their god. I think, they're trying to sort of say industrialization was the thing that changed everything. And even for some generations afterwards, erotic play between children had been regarded as abnormal. There was a roar of laughter, and not only abnormal, but actually immoral. No! And had therefore been rigorously suppressed, in most cases till they were over 20 years old. The results were terrible, which is just like
erotic play between children had been considered abnormal.
Hello.
So they're literally like pushing for maps and everything in this. They're like,
yeah.
I had no idea.
And then another quote from the book. No wonder those poor pre-moderns were mad and wicked and miserable. Their world didn't allow them to take things easily, didn't allow them to be sane, virtuous, happy. What with mothers and lovers, what with the prohibitions they were not conditioned to obey, what with the temptations and lonely remorses, what with all the diseases and endless isolating pain, what with the uncertainties and poverty, they were forced to feel strongly, and strongly was what more in solitude, hopelessly, individual isolation. How could they be stable? Because this is an age in which people are heavily drugged, constantly switching partners.
Mhm.
They also have basically the existence of like sex VR experiences. Like that's a huge source of entertainment. They're called the feelies, where you like, it's like going to the movies, but instead you get to feel everything. Oh gosh, I have to find a quote about that because it's, oh yeah. Here's a quote about like that part of their society.
Okay.
When the assistant predestinator, Henry Foster, saying, quote, going to the feelies this evening, Henry. I hear the new one at the Alhambra is first rate. There's a love scene on a bearskin rug. They say it's marvelous. Every hair of the bear reproduced. The most amazing tactual effects. So
wait, there's a bear. Wait, having sex with a bear?
Yeah, no, on a bearskin rug. So it's like it's a movie with an erotic scene in which there's sex on a bearskin rug, and you feel everything. It's like wearing a haptic suit, but. This is the 1930s, so they don't have words like haptic suit.
I never understood this like group sex thing, like the idea of going to like a movie theater where multiple people are at the same time, like watching a pornography. The thing that like Pee Wee Herman got in trouble for, like who is that? How is that desirable? Like that, or going
in a highly communal society, people wouldn't see it as weird. But yeah, it's the Society of Brave New World is one in which there's basically polyamory, VR sex, underage sex. It's their ideal world. And I mean, there are parts of it that I really like. They would hate, obviously, the selective breeding, the striated society. But there's some other elements of this dystopia that they would absolutely love. And every time I hear about like the sexual ideals of like everything is paid for and you have sex with whoever you want to, and sex is like a handshake, I just think of Brave New World.
Which is very different. Somebody needs to write a dystopia about our future. Oh, I'm writing it. It's the game I'm making.
Yeah.
Where I have our faction be one of the particularly dystopian factions.
Exactly. You're doing it.
They've bred individuals within their faction to have no, the techno-Puritans, to have no arousal patterns anymore and no pleasure from anything other than like accomplishments and exploration. Yeah, instead of just like spamming all that other stuff, just be like, hey, just remove it, right? Like live a life dedicated to, improvement.
It's a very Brave New World, just removing the temptation. You won't feel it anymore. Why would you?
But well, I mean, it's the way I have it work with the faction to make them be sort of like evil, because I don't want a faction that's like representative of my descendants to not be evil, right? Like
Okay.
I want it to be interesting, right? So the pathways that previously were used for arousal appear to have been sort of co-opted by the systems that are associated with accomplishments,
Hmm.
like overcoming particular challenges, which means that one of the big challenges that a person would face, like on Rumspringer or something like this, is a conflict with a particularly challenging foe who you have to defeat or kill or something like that. And so they don't seem to recognize that the sexual impulse has sublimated the kill strong thing impulse, because they're too proud to recognize that's what's happened and it's just the previous emotion there. And so they're all like pretty psychotically, like they're very cold and they don't like to show that they get emotion from anything, but
Okay.
they really like trying to hunt anything they see as a particularly challenging
Oh my
foe or prey, which makes them psychotically bloodthirsty in the minds of other people in the world, which I like, because I don't want my side to be the good guys. I want them to be sort of psychos. I think that that's way more fun than making my guys the utopia. We're making them the dystopia.
Yeah, well, back to this article, what I think was so interesting about it to me was that it isn't like muddled. First, she's like, well, how could women not just receive support for fibroids and prenatal care and postnatal care? But then also, like, why aren't they receiving free housing? And why isn't the infrastructure of their cities perfect? And reproductive justice is what this is all about. But reproductive justice and choice is really mostly about birth control and abortions. But she's also like, no, reproductive choices is about free housing. And that's where I'm like so confused. And I feel like what's going on is she's trying to use one argument that's very popular among liberals, like how a lot of people who are progressive say like, oh, actually how a lot of people in the pronatalist movement who, for example, might be like a Marxist, or like, it's all about pronatalism, which is why everyone needs to have free social, like everything. But really all they really care about is Marxism, right? And I think what's going on here is she's trying to use reproductive justice and choice, which is just an obvious yes if you're a progressive, to argue in favor of, again, Marxism. It's like this horseshoe that we see both among pronatalists and antinatalists or anti-pronatalists, of like, why aren't we giving people endless services? Which brings us back to the entire argument around demographic collapse, which is we can't do that if there's no one to pay for it. Hey, I'm gonna get you toys.
And they're like,
Okay?
well, we'll get the wealthiest to pay for all these AI billionaires, all the tech lords. And it's like, well, they're gonna leave.
Yeah, like
Tech
that's
barons.
a lovely idea, and I'm sure. See, the thing is, like, I feel like there was an era, like the era of Dale Carnegie, where the robber barons of the Gilded Age absolutely did that, and they were rewarded for it, and they were respected in society.
But they
And then
did it before.
Bill Gates tried to do it, and Mark Zuckerberg tried to do it, and to a certain extent, Elon Musk tried to do it.
Yeah.
And they've all been defenestrated, and they're all seen as evil, and they're all seen as the problem. And I think at this point, it's like, well, I tried. I'm not going to do this anymore, because no matter what I do, and no matter how much I give, no matter how much I'm taxed, you're going to hate me. You're going to try to take more, and I'm done. I'm done. So,
Yeah. Well, and you
yeah.
know what they've, I think, realized is that the progressives totally unappreciative, the conservatives not. And this is the thing, like when you're nice to conservatives, they are nice back. And I think that like when Elon, he probably started going to like Trump rallies, not realizing this at first. And he's like, wait, they like genuinely love me, like unironically. Like I might have some beliefs that they disagree with, but they still think I'm great because I'm trying to help. And I think that if Mark Zuckerberg just come to one of the rallies, just come, when you say positive things about Trump, you get love from us. Like the progressives don't give you love when you say positive things about, their side, right? When you're like, oh, whatever. Start banning them a little more, start, You can rig the platform in our favor. And then, I say I'm against regulation, but I wouldn't mind a little bit more on the maybe when they say that we need to eradicate the Jews, you can handle that, because that's happening a lot on a lot of lefty platforms now. I love how they've like gone full anti-Semitic and they're still going with the Nazi thing.
Still haven't figured out the lack of continuity there, but okay. I mean, I think the thing is, if you just keep trying to pull it off and really believing it, then they'll just keep doing it, just lying straight to your face, like no homo, but no anti-Semitism, but the Jews need to die. I mean, it's not an anti-Jew thing.
I'm not anti-Semitic. I mean,
from the river to the sea, but like, of course I love Jews.
Like, of course I love Jews, but like, just the most of them, just the Zionists, which is like,
I mean, just not the blood libel evil Jews who all have to die. I like the good Jews.
It is weird how like ideology just makes so little sense when you try to like construct it more. Anyway, I love you to death, Simone. This conversation has been fun. We initially like went away from like the rant conversations where we just have like a broad concept that we're going to talk about, but you guys seem to love the rants, so that's what we're here for going forward.
Well, yeah, always give us feedback and ideas. Some of you, by the way, send us really great ideas, thematic to some quotes from today's discussion, not Aldous Huxley on X. Shout out to you, dude, for sending us always interesting links. And so, yeah, everyone else, feel free to do it too.
Yep. I love you to death, Simone.
Love you too, Malcolm. Also, just this idea that readers would find it insulting that a man should choose to not reach out to a woman on a dating platform because doing so would require a donation to the Trevor Project.
Sorry, you cut on me. What did you say? That readers would find what insulting?
Insulting. I find it entertaining that readers would be insulted by the idea that a man should be unlikely to pay money to the Trevor Project in order to speak to a woman. Like, if you're not politically aligned.
Right, but he didn't like that, like, somebody would be against an organization that in his mind only exists to help gays who are thinking about suicide. Which, of course, is not why a lot of people don't support the Trevor Project. Like, I didn't want to go on a big rant about why the Trevor Project is so evil, because, that's a battle that I don't fight. That's why I kept redirecting everything. Sorry, there was a chat thread with my Stanford Graduate School business class, and they were all trashing us because we were, front page of the New York Times today?
I don't know.
It was called Women of
We were mentioned in the New York Times. Yeah, I don't know where it was in the newspaper.
And then Amanda Bradford, one of our friends who was at the conference, I guess we can say it now because she must have given them permission to publish that, was one of the people who's speaking. She founded The League, the dating app. She's in my class. She's a really cool person.
She's awesome.
And she was helping people date there. And so I had to respond. Typically, I don't get into these big chats, but if somebody's attacking somebody who stood up for me, and being like, oh, you're a racist or you're a Nazi or whatever. And anyway, so do you want to explain to them how the app would work? It was a really cool idea for an app.
Yeah, the idea that came out during this brainstorming session that Amanda Bradford led at NatalCon was that to reduce the extent to which female participants on this online dating platform were spammed by male prospectors, you were expected as a man to make at least a small donation to the nonprofit of a woman's choice in order to send her a message. So it's similar to Ashley Madison, where I think men have to pay per woman contacted. However, one isn't a hookup for married men site, and two, it's to charity. So this is for good. And it's great because you can also learn something about the woman's values. You can feel good about having donated to a cause that you support, even if the woman didn't get back to you. It's not just like throwing money into a gaping hole of a corporation. And three, instantly if someone is really likely to be politically misaligned with you, which matters these days. So it really helps. It's a very functional, very good feature. And yet that's being used to defenestrate Amanda Bradford and natal con in general, which is just so.
You know how big I am when somebody sticks their neck out for me and then they get attacked for it? That's the one time when I
Yeah.
actually, I just don't. Nope, nope. I'm not having that. You know, if you're defending me, you get my full backing after that.
Yeah, which is appropriate.
Yeah. All right. How am I gonna start this? But I think it gets me all like all the adrenaline from having your whole class like jump on you, like, oh, you Nazi.
Yeah, even the person giving you the shout out being like, oh, I made a mistake. That's just, I don't know. I think it feels really crappy. Feels really crappy for people to not give you even a modicum of, we're not asking people to give you the benefit of the doubt, but like maybe read the article, maybe actually understand the points that you're making instead of just assuming like some kind of pod person that you are a bad person.
I love one guy was like, oh, it's really suspicious that all these people who say that the social safety nets are going to start collapsing due to fertility collapse, that they hang out with all these parties that want to defund social safety nets. And then I'm like, it's equally suspicious that all these people who say they love social safety nets don't seem to care that they're about to collapse. Like, is this whole thing performative? You know?
I mean,
anyway, I'll jump into this.
I'm gonna keep it forever because you throwed my Steve 2 times. Mommy, give it back to me. Give it back to me. No, that's mine, silly.
What are you doing?
I'm a Toasty. I said Toasty not to throw my Steve 2 times that I wanted, and it did, so I'm keeping this lock forever.
And what do you have there, Torsten?
Look, I got a rubber band. You
And Titan, what are you trying to do?
When was the rubber band, though?
What are you doing, Titan?
I want to walk. Give me the walk.
I see.
See?